All right, take two. I'm gonna try to do this casually, quickly, sort of off the cuff. We'll see how it goes. So I had a conversation with this guy, John Anderson, who runs a channel, On With John, and I came away from that conversation sort of sure that I could very easily classify him as a zealot, I think. And it made me really think about sort of how we as religiously unaligned people, or maybe I guess if you want to use the label of atheist sort of strictly, how we should approach individuals who are zealots. And I think that conversation has to start by identifying the components that make up this zealotry. So I think we should go over that today. It's going to be the big thing today. And the conversation is sort of broken up into 5 parts. We're going to go over them one at a time, just sort of casually off the cuff. I'm on vacation right now, so it's not going to be anything crazy. Just going over my notes here. The first component of zealotry is something I'm going to call unwarranted intellectual primacy. A reasonable, normal person will look at a claim about reality, and in order to test the veracity of that claim, they will test the claim against reality, right? Against what we already know about reality, what we can observe. The zealot doesn't do this. The zealot does this sort of in reverse. They will test reality against the claim, and in the case of a Christian Protestant zealot, they will test reality against Scripture, which is just unreasonable. It's a bad faith way of going about things. It doesn't seem to me like you're interested in figuring out whether or not the claims are. Is this mic still on? It is. It doesn't seem to me like you're interested in figuring out whether or not the claim is true, right? The claims that are made in Scripture are true, but you rather want to see if you can look at reality to confirm what you already believe, right? And this goes to the sort of next characteristic. Is this? Okay, sorry. The mic failed on the last try, so we're just trying to make sure that it's still on. Another part of this sort of intellectual primacy has to do with the requirement of faith in a matter in order to investigate it. So, and anytime you hear the word faith, you should read it as positive affirmation of the claim, which is to say that, I believe it to be true already, and only after I believe it to be true can I investigate whether or not it's true or how it's true, right? Which is, of course, not how any rational or reasonable or normal person does anything in terms of investigation. And especially with things with like spiritual matters, things that John would claim to exist, or rather, things that he claims exist sort of objectively, right? Regardless of whether or not I personally agree or believe in their existence. These sorts of things should be examinable and investigable. It should be possible for me to investigate these things without having to affirm a belief in them. So it seems to me a little bit backwards that I need to already believe that the thing is true in order to figure out that it's true. It just seems, again, sort of circular and backwards. And the other thing that I noticed about John in terms of the intellectual primacy is that he seems to have this really strange disdain for what he calls intellectualism as a methodology for the acquisition of knowledge. This idea that sort of looking at things neutrally and skeptically, testing them against reality, testing them at all, is sort of this thing that makes you irresponsible, or that makes you foolish, or that it contains some sort of hubris, or that it says something about you in the larger conversation. I just find silly, really. I find that really, really silly. The second component of zealotry is the circularity of verification, and we sort of touched on this earlier. The idea that sort of wrong teachings and misunderstandings or misinterpretations of Scripture are only rectifiable through Scripture, right? So anytime that someone gets a wrong idea about what Scripture says, the only way to fix that is to read Scripture, right? Or to be sort of in the right spirit, or with the Spirit of God, right? And trying to press him on this, it's sort of revealed to me the circular nature of this reasoning, where Scripture is supposed to inform how the Spirit of God is supposed to inform your reading of Scripture, which again is just sort of like pointing back in a circle and not actually giving you any real methodology for figuring out whether or not, X, Y, or Z is true or sort of consistent with your understanding of reality. This is all just ripe for confirmation bias, if not outright question begging. And it just shows that, again, you're not really concerned about truth. You're not really concerned about what is real. You're not concerned about what conforms with our modern understanding of reality, but you're concerned with trying to find new ways to justify your belief in something, which is, it's just really strange. It's just a strange way of looking at things. He also said that evidence for God is seen in his people, but this only includes those who are living scripturally, which is to say, like, if you agree with John in his particular interpretation, then you're living the right way, and that's evidence for God. But anyone who disagrees with John is living the wrong way and isn't evidence for God. It's a very strange way of looking at things, and it just seems like it's just like an infinitely regressing No True Scotsman, right? Where anybody who can be shown to be outside of the bounds of what John says is the right kind of Christianity or the proper way to be a Christian is not living scripturally, and therefore not a true Christian, right? It's not a true Scotsman. It's just silly. It's just a silly way of looking at things. It's a very irrational and abnormal way of looking at things. I think that most normal people will agree that doesn't make any fucking sense. The third component of zealotry is interpersonal condescension. So the framing of non-belief or skepticism as arrogance or egocentrism or hubris or some sort of other refusal of humility. John talks a lot about this on his channel, and he talked a lot about this with me, sort of complaining about the ego of the atheist, right? Of sort of putting himself first or above or in front of, whatever it is that he thinks ought to be first. Right. And this goes back to the sort of disdain of intellectualism, the idea that the individual is not capable of simply testing things against the reality that he observes and figuring out if these things are true or not, sort of in a very simple manner. The other thing that he does, and man, it was one of the things that really bothered me. Of course, as it should bother anybody who encounters this sort of treatment from a zealot, claiming of superior knowledge or special access or a special understanding of your thoughts, right? So John did this where he claimed to know how I was feeling, despite the fact that I hadn't expressed any such thing, and claiming that he knew what I was thinking and that he knew my motivations for things. This is, if you're going to sit there and tell me what I think, and you're not in my mind, it just shows me that you're not serious, that you're not taking me at my word, that you're not taking the arguments and the positions that I'm giving you at face value. You're trying to sort of poison the well there, by insisting that I believe something that I don't, or that I feel something that I don't, or that I know something that I don't, when it's just not true. And any time that this comes up with other theists, usually it's in the flavor of, well, you know already that God exists and you're just denying him. And that and the general smugness. I mean, he would send these little smiley faces at the end of his messages, which I just read as a shit-eating grin, of he knew that what he was saying was going to upset me, or that it wasn't a complete answer, or that it wasn't an answer that I would accept. And sort of knowing that, and then sort of spitting in my face about it with that shit-eating grin. It's another sort of telltale sign that you're dealing with a zealot, that you're being treated as something lesser, as they see themselves as some sort of above you in some material way. It's very, very strange, and it's bothersome, it's loathsome, and it makes honest conversation very difficult. It's very difficult for me to take you seriously if you're not taking me seriously. It's very difficult to take you at your word if you're not taking me at my word, and you're insisting that you know my mind better than I do. It's funny that you call me arrogant, but you do that, which is like the height of arrogance. So Component number 4, I think, is very obvious. It's just unfalsifiable claims. So the insistence, for instance, that spiritual matters are necessarily outside of human understanding and therefore outside of any ability for humans to test them. Well, great. That's something I can't do anything with. And you've basically you've given me a nothing burger. You know, it's a burger without the burger, because you've made a claim that I can't do anything with. Yet you insist that I have to believe it. And that I ought to believe it, despite the fact that I can't determine whether or not it's true. On top of that, right, to put some fucking dressing on the burger, you insist that despite being outside of human testing, that these things are real and that they do exist in a tangible, sort of physical sense, you know, because you insist that souls are real, that spirits are real, that they interact with reality, that they interact with people, right? And that tells me that these things ought to be measurable, right? That I should be able to take out a ruler and measure them, right? To give an example. And then later in the conversation, he just sort of says the quiet part out loud, where he says that evidence of God can never be produced because this would destroy the foundation of the relationship through faith, right? And again, faith meaning the positive affirmation of the claim. Well, yeah, certainly. If I forced you to provide me with sort of tangible evidence that I could test, you know, this claim against, yeah, it would destroy your faith. You know, it would give you a reason not to believe it. So, I guess you have to make the claim unfalsifiable, right? Because if I can test it, then I can prove you wrong. And if I can prove you wrong, then you have no reason to believe this thing. The last component is a fundamental misunderstanding of the body of scientific knowledge and scientific inquiry. He made some very strange claims during our conversation. He claimed that physics essentially stops at the atomic level, and then cited the Higgs boson as if it was some like amazing discovery that like massively pushed the boundaries of science, and he called it the God particle, which, you know, tells me that you only ever read headlines, my guy. You don't actually know what the Higgs boson is. And it's hilarious because I pointed out to him that actually no, our model of subatomic physics, right, and subatomic particles has like almost a century's worth of history, and we understand these things pretty well. I mean, once you get to the quantum level, you know, our math and physics starts to break down a bit, and we haven't developed the necessary tools to understand these things fully. But to say that science and physics stops there and that we don't know anything past that is insane. And then he, of course he did, he said that intelligent design is the sort of norm that science and that biology is trying to refute and is failing, which, you know, lets you know the caliber of intellectual that we're dealing with here, which is to say, you know, a pseudo-intellectual. Man, you should really read into the Kitzmiller versus Dover case, because holy shit, dude. Of Pandas and People is not a legitimate science textbook. It's not a legitimate biology textbook. It says nothing legitimate about anything in biology, and to insist that the model that it presents, intelligent design, is anywhere near on par with our current understanding of evolutionary biology is insane at best. It's actually absolutely batshit crazy at worst. Either you're ignorant or you're a liar, right? And I really hope that it's the former and not the latter, because I don't like calling people liars. It's not a fun thing. So, really quick conclusion. We discussed a manner in which we could test spiritual matters, and despite the fact that he said it was a taboo, which I found really, really interesting and really telling, I'd like to reiterate the challenge. I think that demonstrating a supernatural healing in front of religiously unaligned people, as per my first WYMI video, would put an end to all of this. It would put it all to bed. Really, like if you could set up a situation, and I'll sort of go over the specifics here. You have a religious, a sufficiently pious or sufficiently faithful individual, as John sort of stipulated, that is capable and willing to do a religious healing. A sufficiently faithful sick person who is untreatably sick, right? Who sort of modern medicine can't do anything with. In order to improve their condition, you have a religiously unaligned person in the room and a camera. And you just do the healing, man, and it would be that simple, and you could put this all to bed. Like I said, he said that it felt really taboo, and that he wasn't sure, and, you know, of course, because it would put your beliefs to the test. But it's okay, man. Like, if you don't believe in Jesus Christ enough to show people that his love is real, then you can just tell everybody that you're a snake oil salesman, and that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. Matter of fact, I think it makes you a better person. It makes you a bigger person to sort of admit that you were peddling a fake product. But yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all I've got written here. I don't think you should pay this man any mind. I don't think that he has anything sincerely useful to say. A lot of his content is sort of like political and neo-reactionary in nature. He's a sort of like diehard Trumper, and he's bought into all of this culture war shit, and I really recommend that you just stay away from it. I don't think that John Anderson has anything meaningful to say. So I think we'll just leave it at that.